No need to complicate the idea here. Whenever you hear evangelism, just think about talking about God, talking about God to other people. Many good and men and women have been doing that for a long time. And I want to talk about evangelism because I really do believe that it is fundamental to us being a Christian, growing with the Lord, working on that zeal that you want to have for Him. I would even go as far to say sleeping well at night, giving you good sleep, helping you grow with a tender heart, growing in knowledge and prayer. It does a lot of wonderful things for us. I think that if we don't consider this topic, that not only is God not being glorified through us in this avenue, but also it's a little bit of a self-inflicting wound. We really hinder from being the type of individuals that we should be. And if you will, just bear with me. I want to read through a couple of passages. They're a little bit lengthy. I probably shouldn't have said that, matter of fact, because that already makes you go, ugh. But just try to put yourself in the shoes of these individuals and try to take in what we're about to read. Mark chapter 5, verse 1. They came to the other side of the sea to the country of Gerasenes, and when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. And the herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country. And people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there, clothed in his right mind. And they were afraid. And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs. And they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. And as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. And he did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends, tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone marveled. It's kind of hard to put yourself in the shoes of a demon-possessed man. I don't know that anyone can do that. I do think we can put ourselves in the shoes of turmoil, pain, oppression. You think about this man. It's hard to know, being in the right mind or not, how much he understood what was going on. But being in these mountains and in this range and going about at night and cutting himself with stones. And then Jesus comes along and he frees him from this turmoil. And the people come out, and the people, whenever they see what's happened, they want Jesus to leave. It's interesting, the demons are asking, "Don't send us out of the country." And the people come and they see Jesus and they go, leave the country, leave the region. And this man was there. And where's he going to go? And he wants to be with Jesus. Doesn't that make sense to you? He wants to be with Jesus. But it's interesting to me that Jesus, what he doesn't do is he doesn't go into that city and say, let me take a shot at this. What he does is he says, you go back into that city. The people that are afraid, the people that are rejecting me, you go back into that city. And I want you to do something. I want you to go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you. And how he just poured out mercy on you. And this man did that. And he went back and very happy to report that many people marveled. You go to Acts chapter 26. Our brother Paul, I like to say, who we will see one day, brings me comfort thinking about that. He was before King Agrippa. He said, my manner, verse 4, my manner of life from my youth, spent from the beginning among my own nation in Jerusalem, is known by all the Jews. They have known me for a long time, if they're willing to testify that according to the strictest party of our religion, I have lived as a Pharisee. And now I stand here on trial because of my hope in the promise made by God to our fathers, to which our 12 tribes hope to attain. And they earnestly worship night and day. And for this hope, I'm accused by the Jews, O King. Why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead? I myself was convinced that I ought to do many things in opposing the name of Jesus of Nazareth. And I did so in Jerusalem. I not only locked up many of the saints in prison after receiving authority from the chief priests, but when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them. And I punished them often in all the synagogues and tried to make them blaspheme. And in raging fury against them, I persecuted them even in foreign cities. In this connection, I journeyed to Damascus with the authority and the commission of the chief priests. At midday, O king, I saw on the way a light from heaven, brighter than the sun that shone around me, and those journeyed with me. And when we had fallen all to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew language, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It's hard for you to kick against the goads. And I said, who are you, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting, but rise and stand upon your feet. For I have appeared to you for this purpose, to anoint you as a servant and witness to the things in which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you, delivering you from your people and from the Gentiles, to whom I'm sending to you, to open their eyes, so that they may turn from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me. Therefore, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision, but declared first to those in Damascus, then in Jerusalem, and throughout all the region of Judea, and to all the Gentiles, that they should repent, turn to God, performing deeds in keeping with their repentance. For this reason, the Jews seized me in the temple and tried to kill me. To this day, I've had the help that comes from God, and so I stand here, testifying both to small and great, saying nothing but what the prophets and Moses said would come to pass, that the Christ must suffer, and that by being the first to rise from the dead, he would proclaim light both to our people and to the Gentiles. And as he was saying these things in his defense, Festus, with a loud voice, Paul, you're out of your mind. Your great learning is driving you out of your mind. But Paul said, I'm not out of my mind, most excellent Festus, but I'm speaking true and rational words. For the king knows about these things, and to him I speak boldly, for I'm persuaded that none of these things has escaped his notice, for this has not been done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you believe. And Agrippa said to Paul, in a short time, would you persuade me to be a Christian? And Paul said, whether short or long, I would to God that not only you, but also all who are here with me this day might become such as I am, except for these chains. You know, I don't remember if it was the very first sermon that I was blessed to give here at Melrose, but at least one of the first. And I gave a lesson on evangelism, and I got to be honest with you, if I could rewind, I would erase it. And one of the reasons, there's more than one reason why I would erase it, but one of the reasons, because honestly, I was a little harsh about it. I was real fired up. I was brought on, and we were going to hit evangelism, and you were going to evangelize, and there was no excuse for you not to evangelize. If you didn't evangelize, you hated your God. And that worked for some people. But you know, as time goes on, and I guess there's a time for rebuke, but that doesn't work, does it? That doesn't work long term. Just a pure, I'm going to make you feel really bad. We don't want to complicate what we're talking about here tonight. You know what we're talking about? Sharing the good news. That's all we're talking about. And whenever we're considering talking to other people about the good Lord, you don't want to get in your head. And honestly, to be fair, you don't want guys like Shawn Briggs getting in your head, like I did, possibly, a while back. Sometimes what you just need to do is you just need to tell others how good the Lord is and what He's done for you. Because that's maybe the only place you're at. You may not have the knowledge to say much more than that. And to be fair, you may be growing in courage, and it may just not be time for that. And I think that's okay. I think that's all right. I really do. He's good to me. I was in a mess, and He cleaned it up. I was lost. I was doing bad things, and He forgave me. And you know, there's some that have kind of abused this storytelling, and it becomes too much about the person. But at the same time, I see that that's what this demon-possessed man had. He just had a story to tell someone. And I see that Paul had a story to tell someone. And you got a story. I got a story. My dad had 3 sons. None of them wanted to preach. Sorry, Dad. And he didn't necessarily have it in mind to preach either. He was in a class and at school, and he said Psalm 23, and his teacher encouraged him, you should look into public speaking. And he wasn't a very confident individual. And he took this combination of a new love for God's Word and this new encouragement, and that resulted in him preaching for many years. And he didn't always preach perfectly, but that was the result of it. And I fell away. I lived as a Gentile. The details are not important. But for years, I lived as a Gentile. And my God was good and patient. And I'm convinced that had I had died, I would have been separated forever. And He saved me, brethren. And He saved me again. And then for the first time, I started reading God's Word, and I started dealing with the sin in my life. I started repenting and figuring out, what am I going to do to make this right? And I started growing in knowledge, and it was a good thing, not an obligated thing. I started connecting dots and feeling like I knew Him better. And for the first time, I was looking forward to studying His Word. Studying it. And then people saw this. It wasn't showboaty, it was real. And then we got into conversation. And I was around 23 years old. When to my shame, I finally started it, but I thank God that I finally started it. Don't be discouraged about your age, just start it. And there was a woman I worked with
who had a husband and a couple of young girls. And I asked her if she would mind if we could go to a Starbucks. I had no clue how much time later on I'd be spending in Starbucks. And we sat down and I shared to the best of my ability my concern for her. And she was the first person that ever came to worship with me. It was here at Melrose. That was a while back, before I ever thought I would preach. I had short, blonde, spiky hair. It was highlighted, and I had an earring, and I thought my dad was going to withdraw from me over it. But this came to me growing, and God giving me more an opportunity, and I'm very thankful for that. And I've got a story, and you've got a story. So, brethren, I just want to encourage you for the few minutes that we have left tonight. My goal is not to guilt trip you. My goal is not to make you feel bad. My goal is to encourage us. And listen, if we're just struggling, can I just throw out a couple of baby steps to this? You know, I wish I could tell you that in Matthew chapter 10, verse 19, Jesus told his apostles, when they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. And I wish I could stand up here and tell you, like, don't worry about it, because whenever you come into that time, Spirit's just going to move right through you, and everything you say is going to be gold. That's unfortunately not going to happen. Truth be told, it's not going to happen. And I do want to join you, because I've had to work on this, and I want you to let your heart be settled. The power at the end of the day is not in your delivery. It's really not. And so you let your heart be at peace about that. Those who are going to seek, and those who are going to hate are going to hate. And you just do the best you can with that. And have confidence that the Lord knows what He does, what He's doing a whole lot better than we do. But here's the first thing that I would say. Do not ever forget that what you're doing at home is important. And boy, I'm guilty of this. I go straight to the outside the walls, and that's an amateur mistake, really, and really discouraging if I'm not careful. The psalmist writes in Psalm 78, verse 5, He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which He commanded our fathers to teach to their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise to tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep His commandments, that they should not be like the fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation whose heart was not steadfast, whose spirit was not faithful to God. You have a wonderful opportunity and a responsibility to those in your own home, from generation to generation, to talk about the goodness of the Lord. Put their hope, I love that, put their hope in the Lord. And so, whether you're mom or dad or whatever, children or no children, just at home, spouses, don't ever forget that sometimes we're evangelizing to those in our four walls. And that may not necessarily mean that they've never come to the Lord. It could mean that they're struggling. It could mean that they've fallen away. It could just mean that they're in a pit. You keep that going. And you help them get their hope back in God. Here's another one. Everyone can do it. Don't ever be discouraged. From those who are younger in the faith, don't be discouraged about your age. For those who are older in the faith, don't give it up as if you're not needed, as if you're not wanted. I think this is another beautiful, just principally psalm. Psalm 71, 17 and 18. I want you to hear the instruction both from a young standpoint and an older standpoint. O God, from my youth you have taught me, and I still proclaim your wondrous deeds. So even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me until I proclaim your might to another generation, your power to all those to come. To the young, well, what do I proclaim? Just do what the psalmist did. You know what? Proclaim God's wondrous deeds. That's it. Don't fret about much more than that. Proclaim how good He is. And you'll have done a wonderful job. And boy, to those who are old, I think you know something more than the younger people do, more than I do, about His wondrous deeds. Your job's not done yet. We still need you. We still rely on you. We still look up to you. And so proclaim the wondrous deeds of God that you've seen for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years. You set front row seat to this amazing God. Praising God. Introducing it in our vocabulary. Psalm 34, 1 through 10. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt His name together. I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to Him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear Him and delivers them. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in Him. Oh, fear the Lord, you His saints. For those who fear Him have no lack. The young lions suffer want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord have no good thing. One of a very practical way in which we can begin to baby step this evangelism is maybe instead of when you hear those around you and they talk about how maybe they were in a difficult situation, and lo and behold, luckily because they kind of got through it, or they had some really good friends that helped them out of that situation, and maybe my aunt gave me some money, or the neighbor gave me a ride to the hospital, and all these kinds of things, and they're proclaiming, and they can be thankful, but all their praises go to the unknown or to the people. And I think one of the ways that we can do this is by simply just making sure that we're inserting God into that. I think you really see where a person's heart is about how much they talk about God just naturally. You know, I was thinking this week that if I had to write some of those letters to some of the churches or individual that I read about in the New Testament, would it have sounded so godly? Does that make sense? Like, would it have been like, listen, you just got to quit doing this over here, and you need to be doing this over here, because you're making a mess over here. But like Paul and Peter and John, they would say all these things, but it was always through a God lens. And I think that if you talked to them back in the days, they would make sure to talk about, the Lord was really good to me last year whenever this thing happened, and He rescued me through it. And these are ways in which we introduce Him into people's lives. And that kind of goes along with this second idea, subtle words. In 2 Kings chapter 5, Naaman, commander of the army, I'm starting at verse 1, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Now the Syrians, on one of their raids, had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "Oh, would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of leprosy." I was just thinking about this. I'm not saying she was trying to slip anything in, but it was just a real subtle mention here. And one of the ways, if evangelism is really terrifying for you, is just to maybe slip in some ways through your conversation with those that you care about. You know what? Yeah, I worship with a woman who went through something like that. And, she had mentioned this to me. Oh, you know what? That's right. I got a brother that I worship with who's in that same line of business. Would you mind if I tell him kind of what's going on? If you'd like to, I can pick his brain and get back to you on that one. And sometimes these are little ways in which we can start to get into this conversation with people. Just some thoughts. And I don't mean to talk down as if you don't know this, but maybe sometimes it's good to be reminded and hear it again. And just helpful words. You remember Acts 18, whenever Apollos is preaching and Priscilla and Aquila are going to hear his teaching. In verse 25, and he had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught accurately the things concerning Jesus, though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue, but when Priscilla and Aquila heard it, and they're really tactful here, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. Helpful words. If you're feeling a little bit more bold, and if you're ready for that, then maybe you know that person that is religious, and you can even see that they say a lot of things that are right on. But maybe you see an opportunity for some helpful words. You can take them to the side. Maybe you don't jump straight into the contradictory statement. Maybe you say, hey, I really appreciate it. I was hearing you say this the other day, and I really do agree with that. Boom, 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 whatever it is. You know, I studied this. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Boom, boom, boom. Here it is. Get back to me. Let me know what you think about that. Or even if you're feeling a little bit more bold, I don't know that I'm quite in agreement with that. My understanding is this. Would you read that and get back to me? And let's talk and see. Because I want to believe that we're both, looking to please the Lord. And so you may be ready to progress to that. And obviously, brethren, we need to be looking for little windows. In Acts chapter 16, verse 13, and on the Sabbath day, we went outside to the gate, outside the gate to the riverside, where we supposed there was a place of prayer, and we sat down and spoke to the women who had come together. Paul, for example, would pray and ask for the prayers of the saints so that a door may be open to them. And what that means is there's a lot of desires that he had and places that he wanted to go, but that sometimes was permitted, sometimes it was not permitted. But I think one thing that you and I would agree with is that Paul made opportunities. Would you agree with me on that one? He made opportunities. And even these passages is like, we suppose that there be a place of prayer. We kind of assume we know where to go. And we were looking for that little open window. Be looking for those open windows. Now, here's what I am confident saying to you. I cannot tell you that the Spirit is going to give you the words to say. But what I can confidently tell you is that the Lord is with you. I do feel confident about that. And I do believe that God can use us as His honorable vessels to accomplish His will. And maybe that all it was just one seed that you threw out, and maybe you never see them again. But let's look for those open windows. And I think we all agree that they're really all around us. But brethren, last passage and then this sermon is yours. One of the fundamental reasons why I think that we need to encourage each other in this area, and this is just a kind of a staple passage, Matthew chapter 9, 35 through 38. And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." First of all, listen, your prayers are coveted. You may be physically hindered from doing this, and I think we need to be considered and understand that. But your prayers are never hindered. Your prayers are never hindered, and they do a lot. They really do. If Jesus asked for prayers, that means he believed in them, and I can feel confident that there's something powerful about that. But brethren, what I want to encourage you and what I need to encourage myself and remind ourselves is that one of the fundamental reasons, going back to the foundation, laying the foundation, that we need to work on evangelizing is because it helps us to become like Jesus. It helps us to love. It helps us to be compassionate. It helps us to remember from where we have fallen. It reminds us of the darkness that we've all been in. It helps us with our prayer. I'd like to repeat that again. Whenever you now see someone face to face, you know them, you know what they look like, and you're praying for them. And it sharpens this as well. Many of you have been through this. It sharpens us. But brethren, it just helps us to be loving like Jesus. And I hope this has been an encouragement to you. I hope you consider it. As Eddie talked about this morning, boy, Satan, he's out there. He is unfortunately just ready to gobble you up. And he's hungry. Man, he's hungry. And he's never full. I think one of the many practical ways this week to also help fight off Satan is to fight for the Lord. So God bless you in doing that. If you need to come to the front, please do so as together we stand and we sing.